Starfleet life with the USS. Are you brave enough to be a Starfleet officer? Do you have what it takes?
Work. Greetings. I'm Admiral Owen Swart, Commanding Officer, USS Dauntless. Let me just turn that down. Apologies. Uh, yes, right. Let's try that again. Greetings. I'm Admiral Owen Swart, Commanding Officer of the USS Dauntless, and this is the briefing with the Admiral for stardate -250702.1. I am the Admiral in question, and today we're going to be talking about Star Trek Attack Wing. But before we do that, let's discuss who we are, why we're here, and what all of this is about. So, the Dauntless is a future-focused advocacy and action group that has an interest in moving our world today closer to the ideal world as depicted in the Star Trek films and television series. Gene Roddenberry, who was the creator of that series, imagined a future in which all of the major problems that we face today, crime, disease, poverty, war, all of that, have been largely, if not entirely, eliminated. And we think that that sounds pretty cool, and we'd like to live in a world like that. So we look around our world today and try to take steps here and now to move in that direction. So what we are at our core is a Star Trek fan club, but we're a lot more than only that. We are also a chapter of Starfleet, the International Star Trek Fan Association Incorporated, which is the world's largest organized and structured, I suppose you could call it, Star Trek fan organization. There are hundreds of chapters in dozens of countries around the world, and we are one of them. We are based in Cape Town, South Africa, but we are based principally online, so we have members in cities all over the place. And if you are one of those members, if you're an active duty member of our crew, you're welcome to join us live for these recording sessions in our Discord server. Go to the screening room channel. You can join the chat. You're welcome to engage with the rest of the crew who are here, or you can ask me questions or make comments live. Please just make sure if you do that, that you mention me, you @tag me in your comment or question so that I can see it when I get to the end. Otherwise, you're welcome to participate there and then. If you're not able to join us in the screening room channel or you're not an active duty member of the crew, you're welcome to join us on YouTube. We usually stream live there at the same time. It looks like it's working today. And if you have questions or comments, please drop them in the chat there. I might be able to see them. And if not, if the time is a little awkward for you, which is admittedly an unusual time, middle of the day on a Tuesday, you're welcome to watch this back after the fact. It's available on YouTube. It will also be uploaded to Facebook a little later in the day. So please let us know what you think, and I'll do my best to respond to your comment or question there and then, or perhaps I might even use it as an inspiration for a future video, which would be nice for everyone, I think. All right, so let's talk today about Star Trek Attack Wing. Now, first, what is Star Trek Attack Wing? It is a tabletop miniature strategy game. But before I get to the game itself, I'd like to just mention why games? Why are we doing this? If we are such a serious organization that takes things so seriously, why games? Well, part of being serious is understanding the various different flavors that seriousness can take. A sort of an informal motto that we have is that on the Dauntless, we work hard and we play hard and we don't mess around. So the working hard is what we do most of the time, but playing hard is pretty important too. And that's important for a number of reasons. One is that it's just fun. It's a fun thing to do. It is a Star Trek game, which means that when we're engaging with Star Trek Attack Wing and other Star Trek games, we are also enriching our experience with the Star Trek universe, this fictional universe, this utopic future, and getting to understand it a little bit better. Um, we did another game a few months back, almost a year ago now, I think, Star Trek CCG, the customizable card game, second edition. And what was interesting about that game is that it was atypical as far as most tabletop collectible card games go, in that it's not really combat focused. It was more kind of mission focused. It's about getting people onto your team and having the people attempt to complete missions, and you're racing against your opponent. So it is still competitive, but in largely a non-violent kind of way, which I think is kind of typical of what we see in Star Trek, where in the United Federation of Planets, violence is sometimes necessary, but it's seen as a last resort and something that we should only defer to once all other options have been exhausted. Star Trek Attack Wing is quite different in that way. It is a direct combat simulator. So it's different in flavor, but that doesn't mean that it doesn't still have value, because it's an abstract combat simulator. We'll see in Star Trek, many of the characters enjoy playing tabletop board games. Probably the most relevant one to this example is chess. Chess is a simulated combat game. And so Star Trek Attack Wing is a lot like chess in that way, although the rules are very different. The core concept is similar, is that each opponent has a set of pieces on the board, and the pieces have to eliminate each other through strategic movement and combat actions until one player wins over the other. You'll find that Star Trek Attack Wing is a lot more complex than chess, and we'll get into that in a moment. But that's really what it's about. It's about social interaction, camaraderie, engaging with the Star Trek universe in whatever way is available, and also it helps us in terms of mission readiness, which is our self-improvement philosophy, because it allows us an opportunity to practice and hone certain sets of problem solving and tactical skills, where you have to not only plan ahead by constructing your fleet of starships, I'll show you what I mean in a moment, but also you have to think reactively in the moment and take strategic decisions that you hope will lead towards the desired outcome. And this is a good way of practicing that kind of thing. So it's personal development as well as social development, as well as engaging with our franchise of choice and all kinds of other cool things. So that's why we play games in general. That's why we play Star Trek Attack Wing in particular. And without too much further ado, let us switch to the other camera so that I can show you what the game looks like. Let's hope that that camera is still working. It looks like it is. There we go. Okay, all right. So this is a basic tabletop setup. One thing you need to know about Star Trek Attack Wing is that there is a lot of stuff. You'll see there are a bunch of objects here on the table. If I would need to zoom out the camera, which I can't do, to show you just how much stuff we have involved here. There's a lot of stuff, but we'll get through a lot of that as we go. The core component of building a fleet in Star Trek Attack Wing is ships. And your ships look like this. They're little 3D plastic models. They have a base, and there are all kinds of symbols and numbers all over this thing. And I'll explain what most, if not all of those mean. So this ship, as you can see, is the USS Enterprise D. It's labeled there on the base. It is the Galaxy class starship you will recognize from Star Trek The Next Generation. There is a little portrait of Jean-Luc Picard with a big yellow number 9 next to it. There are some numbers down the side there. There are some dotted lines out to the side on the rear. There is a blue triangle in the front of the base, and there are some green icons down that side of the base. Those things all mean things, and I'll explain in a moment what all of those things mean. The ship comes with a ship card, which gives you a better view of what a lot of that information says. So firstly, it gives you these same numbers that are down the side of the base. Those are replicated on the card now with matching little icons. The red indicates the ship's attack power with its primary weapon. In this case, because it's a Federation starship, the primary weapon is its phasers. It can use that weapon whenever necessary, but you can add extra weapons to it, and I'll show you how that works in a moment. The green is its agility, which means it's the Enterprise's ability to evade attack. Number one is not good because it's a very big, bulky ship. It's not very good at evading attack, unfortunately. The yellow is its hull integrity, so that's how much damage it can take before it gets destroyed. 5 is a pretty good number, again because it's a pretty large, bulky ship. It can take a lot of punishment. And the 4 in blue tells you how many, that's the shield value. So the Enterprise has shields, as you might recall from Star Trek. All ships are equipped with force fields, and that is how many hits it can take to its shields before the shields go down, and then the hits go onto the hull after that. Other symbols you can notice here, this yellow star indicates that this is a unique vessel. The USS Enterprise D is a named ship. You can only have one ship named USS Enterprise D on your fleet. You can have a generic Galaxy class starship, so you can have multiple ships that are Galaxy class, but you can only have one USS Enterprise D. The symbol here is the United Federation of Planets insignia, which tells you that this is a Federation starship. This block here explains special abilities that this ship has. So instead of making a normal attack with your primary weapon, you may fire in any direction at range 1 to 2 with 3 attack dice. We'll go through what all of that means soon. Here we have a row of icons that indicate, so it's this same row of icons on this side of the base. You'll see that the symbols are the same. Let me get that into the camera shot. They're not in the same order, but they are the same symbols. And then there's another row of icons down at the bottom here that we'll get to. Try and get that into focus. That's a little difficult, but it's fine. You can kind of get a sense of what those look like. And that number 28 in the corner there, that is the point value. So in a game of chess, both opponents begin with the same exact set of pieces. You've got 6 different pieces. There are 16 pieces on the board. In Star Trek Attack Wing, you are able to customize your own fleet, but how do you make sure that your power level is balanced between your two opponents? The way you do that is you agree ahead of time to a point limit for the build for your game. A typical Star Trek Attack Wing tournament would have a build limit of 300 points. So you can assemble a fleet. Here's a different ship card. You can see it has a different point value in that corner. You can assemble a fleet of up to 300 points worth of ships on your fleet. Now, this ship is only worth 28 points, so it sounds like you could get 10 of these ships onto a fleet of 300, and maybe you could build it that way, but that's probably not very clever because you need to add a whole bunch of other stuff to your ship. A ship on its own isn't going to get very far. It needs a crew, it needs equipment, and that kind of thing. So let's look at some of that stuff. So we noticed on the base that there was a portrait there of Captain Jean-Luc Picard with the big 9, and that corresponds to the ship's captain card. So the captain card also has a point value, that's 6 points, and this is Jean-Luc Picard. He is the captain. You can see it says it right there. The image here is the same as the image on that icon. You can get different versions of some of these characters, like major characters like Jean-Luc Picard. You want to make sure that you have the same one that matches up and that they represent the same version of the character. You don't want to be mixing your characters because then you're going to be misbuilding your team. He's also a unique. You can only have one Jean-Luc Picard on your fleet at any one time. This big block here explains what his special abilities are. Again, we'll explain what all of that means soon. The big yellow 9, you'll recognize that. That indicates his, what's the word? Initiative. So he is a very experienced, very capable captain. So he's got a very high initiative value, which means that he gets to move usually first or one of the first. Oh, and he has another icon here, which indicates that you can include a captain's order with him. So you can equip Jean-Luc Picard with a predetermined order card. And the one that I've chosen is this one, which is appropriate. See, it's an order card. It has that same symbol in the corner. It's worth 3 points, and it's engage because it's Picard. And it says, action. If you performed a green maneuver this round, you may immediately perform an additional green maneuver of your choice. Place an auxiliary power token behind your ship. Okay, we'll explain what most of that means later, but this is a thing that Jean-Luc Picard can do because I've chosen to build that together. So now you see how the point value is starting to build up. We've got the 28 points for the base ship. We add 6 points for Jean-Luc Picard, so that brings us to what, 34. We add another 3 for his engage order. Now we're at 37, so now this ship is almost worth 40 points, and we're not done yet. So this row of icons down the bottom here tells us that there are 2 weapon slots and 3 crew slots. So we're going to go through my collection and we're going to pick out 2 weapon cards, one of which is going to be antimatter mines. So that indicates that it's a weapon card. It's worth another 5 points. That goes with the Enterprise. We're going to go with some photon torpedoes because what uses a Federation starship with photon torpedoes? This is a different weapon. It has a number 5. So this red number 4 on the ship's base, that indicates the primary weapon, the phasers. This red number 5 indicates a different value for this specific weapon. This weapon works differently. You can usually only use it once and then you have to give it time to reload. We'll go into some of those details as we go, but that's a secondary weapon. And then we've got the 3 crew slots on the ship. So we're going to choose some crew characters that we recognize as well. We're going to go with Data. You can see that that is a crew card because he has that symbol. He also has a value there, and he's got a special ability that he can activate. We're going to choose Jurdy LaForge. Again, crew. He also has a point value, also has a special ability. And we're going to go with this version of Worf. Again, crew token. Costs 3 points and has a special ability. So this is my complete build for the Starship Enterprise, and it's worth a lot more than the base 28 points that we started out with. So we can only really include 3, maybe 4 ships of this size on a build of around 300 points. So you can see it's a much more constrained, modest build than you might have thought. 300 points is really quite generous in those terms. Right, so that is the build for the Enterprise D, and you can see that I've made a lot of design choices for that. Let's compare it to a different ship. Here is a Romulan Dideritics class warbird, and that is Shinzon. You might recognize him on the base. He also has an initiative of 9 because obviously he's a clone of Picard, so he thinks very similarly to how Picard does. And if we look at some of the choices I've made with the build here, you can see that it's quite different. So firstly, I've gone with the generic Romulan starship. This is not a named warbird, it's just a generic Dideritics class. The values there are quite different. It has a different set of icons there and a different set of icons down there. It's also worth 28 points, interestingly enough. There's Shinzon's captain card. He also has the order icon, so we can include some order upgrades with him there. But his special ability allows us to do something different. We can actually take 4 different order cards, stack them face down next to him, and then we can pick one to use in the moment. That's a pretty cool ability because it means that we don't have to anticipate ahead of time what responses we're going to make. We can choose as we go in response to what our opponents are doing. So I've chosen 4: counterattack, target weapon systems, attack pattern, Shinzon Theta, and full stop. Those are all going to go face down next to Shinzon so that my opponents can't see it. Forgive my old magic sleeves. There we go. That's a little more appropriate. They're going to go face down next to Shinzon on the table so that I can pull on those whenever I need them. Other upgrades that I've selected for the Romulan Starship. Under weapons, I've chosen plasma torpedoes, which work very similarly to the Federation photon torpedoes, just the details are slightly different. I've chosen an interface generator, which is an upgraded cloaking device, which is pretty cool. And then 2 crew members, we've got Centurion Bakra, and we've got a Riemann boarding party. So that should be a fairly well-equipped Romulan starship. I'm not going to show you all the details of the Klingon starship I've got here. You get the idea that these things are flavored differently. You'll also have noticed that there was a cloaking device aboard the Romulan ship, which gives us extra abilities there, and we'll explain what some of that means. Let me demonstrate how a basic turn would go. So I'm going to place, oh wait, no, before I do that, let me show you how we construct the ship itself. So the ship model comes out of the box looking like this. It doesn't have the base or anything like that yet. We still have to make a bunch of decisions before we construct this ship. So we start with the ship model, that's the ship we want to use. We then get a base plate for the model that's going to build on there. It's just a piece of plastic. It's got a specific peg there. It's got little notches on the base on either side. I'll show you what those do a little later. It's got a little arrow showing you which direction is the front, and we're going to set that there for the time being. We're not going to attach this yet. We're going to make some more choices. We're going to put some height pegs. So these little pegs can allow us to connect the base to the ship, and they are stackable. We can actually have more than one. The reason being we want to make sure that we don't have the model ships overlapping and knocking each other over on the table. We want them to be able to sit closely together without interfering with each other from a gameplay point of view. So I'm going to make our ship nice and high. This ship I'm building, by the way, is going to be our ship, the USS Dauntless. So it now has a nice little plastic base. I'm not going to place the ship across atop the base yet. We still have a couple of other things we need to do. Now we get the named base plate. So we have a generic defined class base plate. It has those numbers down the sides. We can, if we flip it over, make it the USS Defiant. So this would then be the unique named version of the ship, but we're not the Defiant, we're the Dauntless. So we're going to go with the generic version so that we can have our own ship represented. We're going to attach that to the plastic base plate, making sure that the forward direction is in the right direction, and place it like that. Next, we need to add a captain. So unfortunately, there is no officially sanctioned Admiral Owen Swart card in game, although Lieutenant Lively did create one for us, so that would be really cool. But the closest I have in printed form is the obvious choice is, of course, Captain James T. Kirk, because we have basically the same special abilities and the same stats. So we're going to use Captain Kirk, and these are the little base plate figures that go on the base plate for the ship. So they clip into these little slots on either side of the lifting pegs. There we go. And now we're ready to attach the ship. These pegs, by the way, will only allow you to attach the ship in one direction. So make sure you don't force it. It needs to be quite gentle. And then it just clips on there and holds it quite steadily in place. That's relatively firm. There is our USS Dauntless. All right, so we need to have a ship card. So this is the matching generic defined class ship card that goes with it. There it is. We need our captain card. So there is the Captain Kirk, which is going to stand in for the Admiral Swart. And then we need to add some other equipment. So what equipment can we add to a defined class? Firstly, we need a generic equipment piece. So we're going to add a cloaking device. So this has a specific gameplay action and it's quite complicated. We might go through that a little later. Cloaking device to make ourselves invisible, escape detection. It has spots for 2 different weapons. And of course we know that in addition to the banks of pulse phases that the defined class has, defined class is also equipped with both photon torpedoes like these and quantum torpedoes like these. So we're going to equip both of those in case we need them. We then also have the ability for 1 crew member. So we're going to add, again, we don't have cards for all of our crew, so I'm just going to add a generic red shirt to the crew. And there he is, and he's going to go there. He's already dead, but that doesn't mean he can't still contribute to the mission. And then we're going to add 2 uh, order upgrades from James T. Kirk. That includes the Corbomite maneuver, that's a typical Kirk maneuver, and a pattern Omega, which is um, a, a maneuver designed specifically for the Defiant class. So we're going to include that. So that is our ship build for the Defiant, at least for the Dauntless. We're going to set all of these up along the table. Obviously, I don't have the full table here, so I'm not going to take up our whole screen space. I'm just going to leave the Dauntless here. Typically, the Dauntless would, at least your ships would start against the edge of the table on your end. So let's move some of this stuff back a little bit. We can move that right down to the edge. There it is, in starting position. And then you would have your opponent's ship. Let's have it be represented by this Klingon bird of prey, which start on the other side of the table up here. I'm just going to leave those there in the moment. Normally you wouldn't leave those in the way because they would get cumbersome. Now both players have to select what maneuver their ship is going to do. How do you choose that? Well, each class of ship, and this is why the class is important, has a set of maneuvers that that ship is capable of performing. So it can move 1 forward, 2, 3, or 4, and then how steeply it can turn, and also the energy cost. So if it's green, that means it's super easy for your ship to do that, and it doesn't cost any energy, and you can maybe even do a second maneuver in your turn if you've got that ability. If it's a white action, that means it's just a regular move. If it's red, that means it's going to tax your engines and you're going to have to make some sacrifices if you want to pull a maneuver like that. These maneuvers correspond to these movement templates here. So you've got your hard turns, you've got your gentle turns, and you've got your straights, and the length of the piece indicates how far you're moving across the table. So these are all the moves that the Defiant class has access to. The Burrell class bird of prey, you'll see, has a slightly different profile of maneuvers. No, in fact, it's not different. It's identical. They are identically maneuverable, but that's not always the case. Let me show you a different example. Here's the Galaxy class. You can see this one's quite different. So much is capable of going backwards at a cost, but is also faster in the long run, and those are differences there. But so how do we select our maneuvers? So each player has to correspond with their ship a movement dial. Looks like this. It indicates what class of ship it is. And printed on this dial is all the maneuvers that are available to this ship. So I am going to, without presenting it to my opponent, I'm going to select which maneuver the Dauntless is going to take. Let's make it just a slow forward, not quite as slow as that. There. 2 forward. I then place this face down next to my ship, ready to go. My opponent dials in his maneuver. His maneuver is going to be a 3 forward. Yeah, there we go. And he does the same thing, places it face down. Then we have to determine who goes first. And the way we do that is by looking at the initiative number. Highest number goes first. So mine is 9. The Klingon captain is a 1. So I get to go first. So the way I go is I reveal my selected maneuver and then I execute the maneuver. I get the movement template, I slot it into that little notch on the base, and I shift the entire base over. That's it done. I can then select an action that I do for the turn. So if I look at my ship card, that tells me all of the actions that the ship has by default. So this is an evasive maneuver, which means that it will help me in the case that I get attacked. I can potentially evade that attack more easily. Target lock allows me to lock my weapons onto the enemy so that when it gets to the combat phase, I might be able to use one of my more powerful weapons, because both the quantum torpedoes and the photon torpedoes require a target lock to be established on the target. So I can activate my target lock. I can scan my opponent, which will help me to cut through some of his defenses, or I can choose battle stations, which gives me an elevated state of readiness so that in either the attack or defense phases which are coming up, that gives me slightly more options to make choices in the moment. I'm going to go with that one. I think that's pretty cool. So the way I indicate that choice is I grab one of these tokens which matches that symbol, battle stations token, and I put it next to my ship's base. That is my movement concluded. So my opponent does the same thing. He reveals his movement dial. It's a 3 forward, and he does that too. Now this is going to cause problems. So he tries to move all the way along here, except, oh no, my ship is in the way. He has to stop moving as soon as his base makes contact with mine, and he cannot take an action because he's tried to go too fast. He has sacrificed any further actions he's made for the turn. Now, because he's collided with me, obviously his crew are now having to take evasive actions. They're too busy dealing with that situation to take any deliberate actions. Now we've concluded the movement and actions phase. Now we go into the combat phase, and we go in reverse order. So the lowest initiative ship goes first. So again, that's the Klingon bird of prey. He gets to choose a combat action. So I'm well within his primary attack cone. So he's just going to fire his disruptors, his primary weapon. The way he does that is he gets the correct number of attack dice. There's 4. These red dice are the attack dice, and he's just going to roll them. And now we look at what we get there. So we get 2 blank results. The blank results are nothing. These results indicate the battle station symbol. If he had banked any battle stations tokens during his action phase, he would be able to convert one of these into a hit. But because he didn't bank any of these, those go away, no hit. So because nothing has happened, I don't have to worry about it. But let's pretend for the moment that actually we had rolled slightly differently. Let's say that he had in fact rolled 2 misses, a regular hit, and a critical hit. Now we have to defend. And the way we defend that is we look at the defensive number, which is 2, and we roll 2 defense dice. There we go. Excellent. So we have 1 successful evade. That evade will evade this hit. That's nullified. And then we have a battle station symbol. Look at that. I banked a battle station. So I'm going to spend this symbol to convert this into another evade. We evaded both hits, no damage. If I had not had that banked and this still went through as a nothing, this hit would then hit me. And the way it hits me is I've got 3 shield tokens which are sitting off the side of the field next to my ship card. I'll show you what that setup would look like here. Here's my ship card, 3 shield tokens. 1, 2, 3. And because it's 1 hit that went through the defensives, I would just take one of those tokens away, indicating that it's no longer operational. So I've got 2 shields left out of 3. Once my shields have all been ripped away, I then start to take damage on my hull. So if a regular damage corresponds to 1 damage card, which then goes on my ship. I can take up to 3 damage cards on my ship. A critical damage, that's something different. Then I draw a damage card off the top and I flip it over and look at the critical damage result. In this case, it's a minor hull breach. After executing a red maneuver, roll 1 attack die. On a hit result, suffer 1 damage. So this is just a passive ability that now sits on my ship until I'm able to repair it. And every time I try to do that, I'm going to have to suffer that consequence. And the way that I indicate that I've had a critical uh, hit damage is I put this little critical hit token next to my ship until I'm able to repair it. There are mechanisms through which critical damage can be repaired. Um, what it's talking about there is a red maneuver. So a normal red maneuver, if we look at the damage, as at the maneuver card, it looks like this. So the only red maneuver typically that a Defiant class is capable of, let me indicate what that looks like, is a 3 hard about. So we take the 3, we place it there, we move the ship all the way to the other end of the maneuver token, and then we turn it around. So the ship is now facing in the opposite direction. That would be a red maneuver. What does that mean? It means that it's exceptionally taxing on my resources and it's going to put my engines under stress. So I indicate that with a stress token that then goes next to my ship on the battlefield like that. Let's not forget about our critical damage, which goes with the ship everywhere it goes. And what this means is that I cannot execute an action. The next time I perform a movement, there's no actions capable, no actions available, and I have to then do a green movement my next turn to help my engines recover, and I can take that off again. Okay, I think that is a general idea. An important thing about combat that I didn't include because the ships were right at point blank, and that is range and firing solutions. So this is a firing solution measuring device. It has 2 sides. The one side indicates primary weapons, so this is your phasers. The other side indicates photon torpedoes and the secondary weapons. And what you can do is use this to measure whether or not your opponent's ship is in your range. So on the base of the ship, you can see there is a triangle there, a blue triangle. That is my firing arc, and that is the arc that I can use my primary weapons at. And these are the 3 ranges I can use them at. So if the ship is within the 1 phase, so that's point blank range, that means I get an extra attack die when I'm making that attack. So actually that bird of prey should have had an extra attack die because I was in point blank range. If it's in range 2, then that's the normal attack value. If it's at range 3, that means the defending ship gets an extra defense dice to mitigate that attack. But that does not apply when we're dealing with secondary weapons or photon torpedoes because they are equally effective no matter what the range. Alright, I think that's everything I needed to show you. That is the basic mechanic of the game. We keep shooting back and forth until all of one player's ships have been eliminated, and for each ship that is eliminated, all of the point value of all of the cards attached to that ship then accrue to the opponent. So if I destroy this bird of prey, I get the points not only for the ship itself, but for all of the crew and personnel that are attached to that ship. And why do the points matter if it's last man standing? Well, because there is also a time limit. A 2-player game has a 1-hour limit. Whoever has the most points at the end of that 1-hour time limit wins the game. Yeah, so that's the core functionality of how this game works. There is a lot of customizability when it comes to the game, not only when you're building your team, as your fleet, and not only in deciding what the build size is, but also each ship that you purchase comes with a scenario that you can then play. So you've got the basic set, which looked like this. I don't think they are being made anymore, but this was the original starter set. It came with Enterprise D, Romulan Warbird, and a Klingon Vorcha class battlecruiser. There are a couple of scenarios included in that, but it includes all the basic tokens and dice that you need to be able to play. Then each other ship came sold separately. So this was sold separately at this little bird of prey. It had a named captain plus a few generic captains. It had all of the basic cards that would be appropriate for use with this ship, as well as all the little cardboard tokens that would belong with that ship, as well as a playable scenario, either a 1-player scenario that you can play on your own, or a 2 or a 3 or a 4-player scenario that you can play with your friends, and it would provide an alternate victory condition. So you all have to attack a specific base and overcome its shields in order to win, or that kind of thing. So that's a really cool mechanism for how these games are built up. And as you build up your collection of ships, you're also increasing your number of options in terms of gameplay outcomes. You're not limited to just the same basic combat each time, unless you want to be. There's also a bunch of extra tokens that come with all kinds of stuff, things like these planet tokens, which sit on the battlefield and you now have to fly around them because flying into them causes problems. You've got minefields, you've got defense platforms that can shoot back at you that are automated, all kinds of cool stuff like that. Um, yeah, so that is the basic game. So let's talk about. Okay, let me switch back to the camera of my face. There we go. So I can tell you a little bit about where we are commercially with this game now. So this game began. It was released by WizKids, which is um, one of the major tabletop gaming suppliers. It was released back in about 2011, 2010, somewhere around there is when it started. It is still being published, although it's no longer being published under the name Star Trek Attack Wing. It's now called Star Trek Alliance. And the figures that are being published for Alliance, although they are still compatible with the old Attack Wing rules, the way they're being released, it works a little differently now. So now they come in packs of 4, similar to that starter pack that I showed you, but packs of 4 ships, and it is a pre-built scenario box, typically designed for 2 players, so that you can play it as is out of the box, and then add those new figures and cards and tokens to your collection so that you can build it up that way. There are also extra rules in the Alliance which I haven't played, so I can't tell you how those work. Um, so Star Trek Attack Wing, strictly speaking, is no longer available. The Star Trek Alliance is still fully compatible with Attack Wing, so you can still purchase those, except not in South Africa, because they are not. This game is no longer being distributed locally. I'm not going to mention names, but there is a certain company that, for whatever reason, has elected not to continue importing these products, and so they are not available here. If you want to get your hands on some Star Trek Alliance merchandise, you're going to have to import them from overseas. And it is fairly costly, not only because the purchasing the materials to begin with is a little pricey, but also the import duties and shipping and that kind of thing is going to set you back quite a lot. Um, that said, there are other options. Um, and whether or not you are comfortable with doing this is up to you, but there is something else you can do, and that looks like this. Here it is. So in Steam, there is a game called Tabletop Simulator, which is, as the name suggests, it's a 3D tabletop environment where you can create, well, yes, I suppose you can do it. You can create just about any board game you can imagine, and there is an active modding community that has made all kinds of games that exist in tabletop, in physical gameplay, made them compatible with the tabletop simulator system, and Star Trek Attack Wing is one of those. So here is a simulated version of a Star Trek Attack Wing gameplay table, and we're going to take a look at what this looks like. So this is just a basic table. There's your map. You've got all of your cards and movement tokens down here. You've even got a timer to track how long it takes you. Down in this corner, we've got the Star Trek Alliance materials. So there are ships and cards that are made by Star Trek Alliance. So if you want to look into how that gameplay works, you can investigate the objects in that corner. But we're going to look at the Star Trek Attack Wing stuff, which is up here, and I'm going to specifically look at the catalog of ships. So I'm going to load this. It's going to take a little while to load because there's a lot of them. So again, the ships were purchasable as individual ships at first. You would buy an expansion pack, which was just one ship, had all the tokens and stuff that came with it, as well as extra scenarios and other cool things. There was also the starter pack, which was the initial purchase that you would make, and then there was also an organized play system where local gaming stores would offer the opportunity for players to come in once a month, play a predetermined scenario, which was based on something from Star Trek. So the first one was the Dominion War. Each month would the gameplay for that month would represent a different engagement in that war, and then you would be offered the opportunity to build your collection as you went. You could make more purchases, and then whoever won the overall tournament after, I think it was 3 months or 6 months, whatever it was, would then earn a nice big prize. And the prize for that first one was this. It was a playable Deep Space Nine station, which was very cool. I'm just going to drop this on the map here. And that's what that looked like. So it's a lot bigger than the regular ships. Let me show you in comparison to the regular ship tokens. So this is a regular size ship token. I know this says USS Dauntless, but it's not us. This is the fake USS Dauntless that they found in Star Trek Voyager. How do I spin it around again? That's not working. Okay, that's fine. Um, this is yeah, this is the normal ship size. So the playable Deep Space Nine is a lot bigger. We've got some other big models here, like the Borg cube is also a little bit bigger. It's bigger even so than Star Trek DS9, but it is completely playable as a ship, and that's very cool. So you can build your team out of all of the ships that are available. This is the full library of every printed ship that came out in the game. So you can build out of whatever, and then you can play in this virtual environment. And yeah, all the tokens are available here. It even has the scenario cards. So all the scenarios that came in all the booster packs are all available in these missions. I think it's up here. It's in one of these options. You can explore this as you like. Tabletop Simulator, if I remember correctly, is not itself free. You have to pay a small fee to purchase the basic simulation package on Steam, but then the mods are all free. So you can find the Star Trek Attack Wing mod. There's also one for Star Trek CCG if you're interested in that, as well as just about any other tabletop game you can think of. Right, so that is the alternative for playing if you are interested in playing, but you can't get your hands on physical models, which is not at all unlikely. If you are fortunate enough to reside here in Tau Team, you are in luck because my collection is quite extensive and I can personally field multiple fleets for a single game. So what we will do at some point is have a tabletop game in which Star Trek Attack Wing is played, and we can build multiple fleets ahead of time. There has also been some possibility about obtaining some old stock figures. I don't know where we are with that. I'm not going to mention names again, but hopefully we can get our hands on some old stock that the local distributor wasn't able to shift years ago. All right, so that's what that looks like. In terms of where this game came from, if it looks at all familiar to you, that's not surprising because the same basic gameplay system called the flight path system, which was originally developed for the fantasy flight game Star Wars X-Wing. And so the figures look kind of like this. That is an X-Wing fighter. You'll notice it looks very similar. It's got the same kind of rows of icons down the side. If you played it at all, you would recognize that the movement templates were very, very similar. Um, Question arises, are they mutually compatible? Can you play your Star Wars and Star Trek figures together? Unfortunately, they are not. I haven't tried to do that myself, but I have it under good authority that although the gameplay systems are very, very similar, they are just different enough that you can't really play them together. But I'm sure there are compatibility rules out there that would allow you to mix them together if you really wanted to, but out of the box, that doesn't really work. You might also recognize these figures from the game D&D Attack Wing, which is made by the same company, WizKids, again using the same flight path system, but it uses Dungeons and Dragons characters and figures instead of Star Trek figures, but it's the same basic game, so that's a lot of fun. All right, I think that's everything I needed to cover about this. Let us look at the comments and questions. Let's see. All right, back up to the top here. Okay, good. Sound seems to be working this time. I'm relieved to see that. Okay, from Master Chief Kotzer. How much money have I invested already in my Star Trek Attack Wing setup? What would I say is the minimum or recommended financial investment to get started? Um, that's a very good question. I've probably spent in total 4 or 5 thousand rands on this collection over several years. It's been some time since I've been able to spend any real money on it, other than just picking up old stock from warehouse factory sales or whatever. The initial starter kit was, I think, 500 Rand back in the day. Obviously, it would be a lot more now if you're able to get your hands on something like that. And then each booster pack was, at the time, 300 to 400 Rand, depending on the ship. Um, so, yeah, you can expect to drop a fair amount of money on it if you want to, but again, it's going to be difficult to do that now, what with the international shipping and duties and that kind of thing. It's going to be a limit. Commander Shamali asks, what happens if the ships fly into each other? Do they actually fly into each other or do they fly over each other or Something else. Oh yes, I did show you how that works. So there is the collision system. They have to stop moving once the bases touch, and then there is a penalty for doing that. There's a collision penalty. Can no longer take the action that they would have taken during that turn. So that slows things down a little bit. From Lieutenant Lively, question for later. In comparison to tabletop games like Warhammer 40k and the like, how do you think, from starting to play attack wing to being able to play proficiently, do I believe it takes? Um, so I haven't played Warhammer 40k, but I have played a few other tabletop miniatures games. And of those, I would say attack wing getting to proficiency is probably the longest turnaround. Just because there's a lot of complexity with the upgradable options. So the more cool stuff that you add to your fleet, the more complexity it adds, the longer it's going to take you to kind of figure out how to smoothly execute your turns. Not that you shouldn't do that. It's still fun to do that, but it's about as complicated as kind of one of the most complicated board games that I've played. So you can learn to do it in an afternoon, but getting to that point where you're able to efficiently make your moves and map out your strategy in real time, that's going to take quite a few games to get your head around that. I would place it in terms of complexity on level with something like HeroClix. Not as it is today, but as it was about 10 years ago. There was a lot of complexity in the HeroClix system where there was all kinds of cool stuff that you could add to your force in addition to just the characters on your team. Um, that level of complexity, I would say, is pretty much on par. All right. Anything else? Ah, okay. Just a thank you from Lieutenant Lively. I'm looking at YouTube comments. Okay, good. That's just the same stuff. Fantastic. All right. I think that is everything we needed to talk about there. Let's hope that we can get some attack wing tabletop time in uh, together, either in person here in Tau Sector or wherever else you happen to be in the world, or failing that in Tabletop Simulator. I'll try to set up an online session for us pretty soon, and maybe we can give that a go. Again, bearing in mind that there's a pretty steep learning curve to getting your head around the mechanics of the game, but hopefully this video will help give you a little bit of a head start in that regard. There's also a non-trivial learning curve to understanding the tabletop simulator environment. So it's not quite as intuitive as having the physical objects in your hands where you can see where everything goes. It's got all those little digital bags and boxes around the table, so you need to know where to go to look for the stuff that you need. But again, that could be fun to spend a bit of time figuring out together. So if anybody's interested in that, give me a shot and we can work that out. Okay. Let me Okay, comments. Okay, from Lieutenant Lively. Yes, thank you. Captain Von Curtis says practice makes perfect. Yes, that's quite right. We are going to have to spend some time practicing it. From Petty Officer Duran, thank you. It's amazing. Great briefing. Hope to I can play it someday. Yes, I hope you can too. Happen to know for a fact that there are some Star Trek Attack Wing figure collections circulating in and around the Alpha Team. At least in the Alpha Sector area, because I sold those figures to them myself back in the days when I was running a gaming store. So there are people in your area who have these figures and would likely be interested in playing if you can track them down. So if you sniff around the local gaming stores there, especially the kinds of gaming stores where strategy miniature games are being played, and you indicate your interest in playing Star Trek related games, you might get somebody saying, "Oh, I've got a game that might interest you." That's what you might have to do. Yes, time to hunt people down. That's quite right. All right. In conclusion, let's carry forward the spirit of exploration and camaraderie that defines us, and dive into this adventure together with strategy, teamwork, and lots of fun. Let's make this game the most of it. No, let me try that again. Let's make the most of this game and enjoy the journey. Are you ready to play? That's it for today. You are dismissed. SWAT out.